they're in the Fundamental 5 and how we're going to be doing walkthroughs. So this is part of that. Really what we're trying to do is just to get you guys to understand what we're looking for when we come in with framing the lesson. This is the I will, we will statements that we have. We're asking you to put on your board. And basically, here's the basics. If I had to come up with just one phrase, it's letting your kids know what's coming up in your class, and then secondly, how they're going to be successful in your class. That's all framing the lesson is. So it just gives your kids a gauge as to, hey, what are we doing? And how do I know if I've been successful? How do I know if I've learned what I'm supposed to learn? So big things are within framing the lesson, all right? And I'll send this out to you guys so you have it, so you can reference it and look at it. I'm not gonna say every word that's on this slide, but you can, if you don't have the Fundamental 5 book, please come by. We have plenty of them to give you, and the longer explanations on pages 25 through 40. We kind of talked about what it really is. It's the I will, we will statement. And the thing I like about the most is the last point on the left. Before the student leaves the room, you should be able to determine if they were successful or if they were unsuccessful. They should know when they leave, hey, either I learned what I was supposed to learn or I didn't, okay? And you as the teacher know, they as the student knows, and that's huge. We want kids to know what's expected of them and what they want to learn, okay? Provides clarity for you, provides clarity for the student, focus for the class, visual cues for the students as they come in the door so they know exactly what's going on, okay? And it ties into PLCs, right? This is what do we want to expect students to know and be able to do, and how we know if they've learned it, all right? How do you make it valuable? Lots of different things up there. Two big ones is the real world application, and then I think having kids write things down is huge, right? So writing it down in their journal, keeping track of it are some things that make it really poignant for our students. The more real world you get for students, the better they're going to have it sink in. Questions for excellence. Just like anything we do in education, there's degrees of excellence, all right? And so some of the things that you want to do or you want to think about when you do these are they manageable? Are they measurable? And are they most important to the lesson? Does it match the rigor that's in the learning objective that I'm really going after? And remember, just because you have this learning target, this I will, we will statement, doesn't mean that you're not going to talk about different things in your class. This is just the most important thing that you're getting from your class. This is the big takeaway. This is the big picture. This is the big ticket item that your kid needs to understand, or your kids need to understand once they leave your classroom, okay? We'll talk about Bloom's taxonomy really quickly here later on. And if you really want to make it great, talking about rigor and relevance, is it real world and is it compelling? Is it something students want to do or invested in? Here's Bloom's taxonomy. I'm not going to go through it, but when you see this, think about it, right? Where am I at on this? Is this compelling work? Is it going to pique the interest of my students? And then finally, I think this is the last slide. We want you to kind of get to know what we're going to be looking for in our mass walkthrough. So what this is all about is just figuring out where we are as a campus, okay? So we'll do this mass walkthrough. We'll come in. We won't spend much time. You won't really get personal feedback on this type of walkthrough next week. It's not happening this week. It's happening next week. But you will get a report from us about how we're doing as a campus, right? Is it rigorous? Does it match the TEKS? Is it going to be something that's compelling? Is it going to be, is it going to match? Is the I will and the we will matching? These are the things we're going to be thinking about as we walk through and taking note of when we walk through quickly in your class. And remember, this is a 5-minute snapshot, right? We're going to go in, we're going to record, we're going to evaluate, and we're out. Okay? So if we don't see something, which is possible, then we won't measure that. Okay? That's just kind of an NA, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on mass walkthrough?
The mass walkthrough has been
No, that's a great question. Great question. Perfect. Perfect. All of us are going to show up on your door ready to rumble. No.
And that will not disrupt class.
It won't disrupt class. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. No, I'm glad you asked that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get into every classroom at least twice. And we're just collecting data. That's all we're doing. So the reason it's a mass walkthrough is there's a lot of them. And really and truly, the feedback is about all of us as a group. How's our school doing with this idea? Okay, great question. Any other questions about
So when
that?
you're saying it won't, if something can't be measured or is not being done, it's not, you're not going to measure it in there and it'll
Right.
say an A.
Right.
So we should see things like this isn't in here or not shown.
Yeah, you won't get anything. This won't be anything that you get personally, right? This is going to be the whole.
These aren't going to be instruct.
No,
They're going to be like
correct.
cumulative growth.
Great question. It's a cumulative thing for our campus. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Scroggins.
Not this week, but next week.
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
That's the last week of the 6 weeks. We're giving
That's a really good point, Ms. Scroggins. That's a really, really good point.
You want us to send you days if we
I'm glad you brought that up. We might want to think about that. It's a really good point.
if we are going to, if it's possible, we just send you the days we're testing. That way we don't monitor it.
Yeah, that might not be a bad deal. Obviously, if you're testing, we're going to walk right out the door and go, right? So I'm glad you said that. That's important to know. I forget those things sometimes. So we may change that week, all right? Just so you know, we might think of a different week that might be better, but we'll see. Yes,
Will you chat with the students about what they're doing?
we may. Yeah, we absolutely may. Yeah, I like to do that. I think that's really important. Do you understand kind of what's up on the board? Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Okay. And that's it. I'll send you this PowerPoint so you kind of understand. We will think more about the timing of this and see if there might be a better time, or maybe we're going to get in classrooms earlier in the week and try to cut that off at the pass. We'll see. Okay? Thanks so much.
Guys, I'm going to be a little fast and furious today because I know most of y'all would rather be doing what you want to do instead of listening to me. One of the things I want to emphasize about walkthroughs, if I've done a walkthrough in your classroom, you probably realize, I walk in, I watch 5 to 10 minutes. When I walk out, I'll write you something in Strive, and it's going to say, I saw this and I thought it was great, and I really think you did this well, and I love this, and here's some things I think might make you better. And that's all it is. I've got 15 years in the classroom myself. If you've coached, one of the things you learn as a coach, it's easier to get better as a coach because you're coaching with other coaches. You can watch other coaches. You get better working with good coaches. As a teacher, typically you go in your room and you got nobody else to give you any feedback. You got nobody to watch. So this is an opportunity for someone else to come into your room and say, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, have you noticed that you spend 90% of your questions go to the right side of the room? Most teachers teach right-handed. Most teachers never notice that until somebody points it out to them. Things like that. So it's not meant to be stressful. You're going to get used to administrators being in your room because we are going to be. That's part of our job, to do our job correctly. But don't take it as something stressful. Take it as us reinforcing the good and maybe giving you some pointers to try to do better on some other things. None of us are perfect. All right, I've got some things I wanted to go over. Mr. Phipps gets to do the instructional part. Mine's mostly nags. The bistro. Bistro's actually not doing too bad. The biggest issue we have at the bistro is during lunch when it's hard to tell who should be in class and who should be in the cafeteria. I typically will go in there and there'll be a long line and I will say, how many of you are not in lunch this period? And strangely enough, some of these kids will say I'm not, which I'm thinking, wow, you're really honest. And I spoke to, you have to love them for that. I spoke to some the other day and they said, but my teacher doesn't mind me being down there. I said, no, that's not okay. Go back to class. And it's not okay. All right? Do not release them during class to go to the bistro. They're supposed to be in your classroom learning. Again, I'm going to say it again. Do not release them during class to go to the bistro. They can eat it there at lunch. and if they are fast enough, they can get it between classes if you don't mind them bringing it in. However, if they are in that line when the bell rings, I run them all down to get a tardy slip. And that leads to a second part of this. If they are at the bistro or anywhere else and show up at your room after the bell, make them get a tardy slip. I mean, that's a campus policy, and I have done everything I can to make this as easy for you as possible. You have to say 5 words. Go get a tardy slip. That's all. Yes, ma'am. It's going to be on YouTube for people to watch. I'll send a link out tomorrow. I think I opened the door there, though. I had a lot of people begging off. Anyway, tardy slips, and by the way, all you people watching on video, just because you're not here doesn't mean you're not accountable for all this. Just have them get a tardy slip. I mean, that's why that sign's on your door. Just send them to get a tardy slip. It's very simple. You don't have to deal with it. There's no record keeping. And the tardies, at least at the start of school, went from the first week around 10 a day. Now I see 1 or 2 maybe. And there's always going to be those 1 or 2. It doesn't matter. Yes, ma'am.
So I teach all freshmen, and we are always dependent on other people for rides to and from school.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten a lot of notifications today of kids that are going to ISS because of tardy.
Yes.
So they're missing class, and then now they're going to miss more class.
Right. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Is that like an after-school detention?
We've already tried that by the time they get to ISS. I mean, I think ISS is 5th tardy. And I can't put the parents in ISS. If I could, I would, but I can't. And so I don't have any other option. Weekly grades. Grades should be in every week. We've been a little lax on checking this. Ms. Schisler, who is as efficient as any person I've ever worked with, will be checking these every week from here on out. I'm not saying you have to have every grade entered by Friday, but some grades every week. Parents shouldn't look at grades 3 weeks in a row and it just doesn't change, and then it changes a lot. All right, here's a big one, and I'm going to take, this is my fault as much as anything, but the first few weeks of school with all the new stuff going on, we haven't said much about dress code. And the last few days I have decided I just can't stand it anymore. We are going to start working on dress code. I have seen a lot of things that kids don't need to be wearing. We will make an announcement tomorrow and the next day telling kids we'll be checking and enforcing dress code beginning Monday. What I'd really like to concentrate on are holes in pants that are way higher than they need to be, shorts that are way shorter than they need to be, shirts that come up to here, and we'll be catching that in the hall. I just want to make sure I'll give them a little fair warning. Hey guys, we haven't really got on this. We're getting ready to start getting on this. Certain things don't bother me too much. Things like hair color and earrings and facial piercings, as long as they're not grotesque. That kind of stuff doesn't bother me. But when it gets to modesty, we've got to deal with that. Lesson plans should be posted every week. I'd already talked about walkthroughs. Detention. By the way, I don't know, how many of you are aware that you can assign after-school detention? Not many? Some? Okay, because it's not being very, very highly utilized. And this is, I want to make sure y'all understand, there is a little green sheet, and you fill it out, and you get that kid to sign off on it, and you assign them an hour or 2 hours of detention, and you put it in the box, and that's all you got to do. You don't have to sit it. Where's Mr. Van? Mr. Van needs work. He does this quite often. And, I go in there, and there's maybe 2 or 3 kids in there most days, which makes me think that you're not aware of the fact that you can use this. Probably most of you have not been any place where you had the opportunity to assign after-school detention. I think teachers are well capable of that. But if a kid it gives you something to use before you send a kid to the office. Yes, ma'am. If the student what? If the student does not serve the detention, they get 5 days. we give them some time. We're saying you're high school kids, and we don't assign it for a specific day. We give them a date range. And then if they don't serve it by the end of 5 days, it goes to an administrator and we stick them in ISS for a day.
But what I meant was, I'm sorry, I probably wasn't clear. Is there a way on the teacher end that you can know whether they served it or not?
Yeah, if they serve it, we'll stick that slip back in your box, the slip you wrote up.
If we didn't get the slip back and they never served it.
Okay, yes. And they should be going to ISS. The way this works is an administrator, I don't know if we've been returning the slip, maybe we haven't. Let's start.
It's on the staff up to the detention list. And they highlight them if they have served their detention.
And we will start we'll write on the slip, serve so-and-so date, and the person will initial it and stick it back in the box, and that way you've got positive confirmation. And I'm glad you pointed that out because that's a hole that we needed to fill. But you have the opportunity to give detention if you need to. Yes, ma'am.
Is it strictly for behavior or is it for not training work?
Let me get closer. I can't hear you. It's what, I heard,
Behavior or is it for?
whatever you want it for. I mean, you can say, if you don't turn that work in tomorrow, I'm going to give you an hour of detention. And then let them do their work in the detention if you want to. I mean, I'm basically trusting you to use your judgment, which, is not something most administrators will let you do. But I think, I used to be a teacher myself. I don't think I immediately became brilliant when I became an administrator. All right. Campus Educational Improvement Committee. In other words, the Campus Site-Based Committee. This is the committee that we're required to have that has people from the community, and they make the campus improvement plan. I'm not even going to ask for a show of hands. If you were on that typically you do 2-year terms on this. If you were on that last year and you still have time on your term, then send me an email because I'm trying to figure out who all's on this group. If you were not on it and you want to be on it, send me an email. And my instructional leadership team, you're automatically there. But if you are not on the instructional leadership team, but you want to be on the site-based team, send me an email. Also, I'm looking for some parents or business people from the community. We try to get those on there. If you know of someone that would be good for this, send me their name and an email. I'm trying to put this group together. And anything you can do with that to help me out, I appreciate it. This group will not meet real often, probably once a semester. They have a few specific duties they have to do in the fall. We'll typically do the campus improvement plan in the spring, and then you help work on the campuses. What's the word I'm looking for? I'll think of it in a minute. Lost my train of thought. Also, the district site-based decision-making committee. If you are on that already or want to be on that, please let me know. By the way, the word I was looking for, professional development, for some reason that left me. The site-based campus committee helps determine the campus's professional development calendar. So if you want to be on that, let me know. If you are supposed to be on that, let me know. Or if you know somebody that'd be a good fit for the campus committee that's not an employee, let me know. The last thing I want to talk about is rigor in the classroom. You're going to hear this every meeting, over and over. We need to make sure that we're teaching kids rigorously enough that they can do well on the many, many evaluations that they have to take. I think these kids are very capable, very capable. I think most kids, and these kids, I've been watching them for the last couple or 6 weeks or so. I think they're really a sharp bunch. Compared to other places I've worked, these kids are head and shoulders above many I've worked with. And they probably can take more rigor than we're giving them. School should not be dead easy. I mean, it should be sort of hard. I mean, because that's what they're going to be competing with, people who went to sort of hard schools. And when they get out of here, there's always competition to get in the best colleges. And the more rigor that we give them, within reason, the better they will do. So I just wanted to emphasize that, and also in the meeting with our campus goal, which is 100% of our students will either be able to go to college, join the military, get meaningful work, or get a professional certification, but within 1 year of their graduation. I think that's a great goal. And if we don't, do y'all have any questions? And I'm getting ready to dismiss. Yes, ma'am.
And it's
Sorry, I'm getting.
been my question since that's been our goal. How do we track that?
It's not super easy. What we would have to do, we'll set some sub-goals. It's a overarching, audacious goal. We'll set some sub-goals. The hardest one to track would be meaningful employment.
Right.
And I'm not totally sure how we track that. But we can certainly. And are we ever going to get 100%? Probably not. I mean, there's going to be some kids working at McDonald's. But we can track some of that. We can track college or career. We can track military pretty easily. We already have to track some of those.
Right.
That's a good question, though. You're right. It's not a SMART goal. I mean, typically you'll write a goal like that, and then you have sub-goals. And the sub-goals will be more specific. But it's a good goal. Other questions? All right. Thank you very much for your time.